right. Hello everyone. Sorry, slightly late start today. I actually was just wrapping something up, so um, not quite as ready as I would have liked for this. Let me just get a terminal up as well, and then we're gonna go through what happened over the past couple of weeks, and then look at that issue. All right. I'm also, just like I mentioned in the last video, but not on stream, I'm in the new location here. Still a bit of a work in progress. The inside construction is not all done, at least, so that's cool. Still needs to do some amount of cleanup, put up some of the kind of artwork and stuff, decorations and whatnot, but otherwise, mostly a functional space now. And yeah, still need to see exactly what I'll do around sun treatment and the like. Just moving the camera a bit. There we go. Sun treatment and the like. The microphone is doing a pretty good job from what I can tell. It's not too echoey, other than it being echoey to my ears. But as always, like the more furniture and stuff you load into a room, the more it absorbs reverb. So that's the kind of thing I'll try and fix probably last once everything is in place, if it still bothers me. Anyways, IncusOS. So let's look at what happened over the past couple of weeks. Since last week was an Incus release, there was no live stream covering the changes, and we've been a bit busy. So let's see. If we go to around 2 weeks ago, what would have been okay, this one says 2 weeks ago. What's the date 2 weeks ago? So on the 2nd right now, it would have been the 18th of September. Okay, there we go. So basically that was last live stream here, and then everything up from there. Okay, so just go one page further, and we can see Ceph being kind of tweaked here with some changes to the services structure. Okay, so that was 2 weeks ago. Now let's see what happened since. So, and just as a reminder, like I think last live stream, it was mostly work on Incus itself rather than IncusOS. So it was code that made it into Incus 6.17 to specifically detect whether you're running on IncusOS or not, and then prevent you from doing some potentially dangerous actions like removing the last certificate or unsetting the listen address. So that's why there's not much in the way of commits on the IncusOS code base. Then we noticed that the recovery logic wasn't working quite the way we wanted it. So fixed that. That effectively makes it possible to provide users with a signed hotfix script that will then run on the system. It needs to be signed by the same entity that's signing the updates. In this case, it's Linux containers. Just to keep the system safe, but at least it does provide us with a way to do some debugging and recovering on specific systems. A bunch more fixes here around the storage API. It was incorrectly picking up some Z-vols that was causing some issues, so fixed that. Simplified a bit of the logic and recovery again. Tweaked. So that was the linter, the newer version of GoLint CI came out, so we needed to do some updates. Then what was that chunk of work for? Yeah, adding an API to re-import an existing Z-pool. So that was us gearing up for the ability to do factory reset on system, as well as backup and restores of IncusOS systems. Basically, if you factory reset the system, or if you do a backup and a restore, the Z pool, so like any additional storage pool on physical drives on the system, that is not part of the backup or anything else. It's just they're separate from the IncusOS install itself. So we added APIs so that post reinstallation or post factory reset or post backup restore, you can provide the pools and config keys, and they get re-imported into Incus. So I got support for that. It also technically allows for, in theory, pulling out some drives on one machine, bringing them into another machine, and re-importing the pool. So we've added that logic. I fixed a small issue where, like, if there was an install failure that would trigger a rerun, it was it was then failing because of another bug, so fixed that. And then we've done a bunch of follow-ups around getting Migration Manager and Operations Center available as applications. That took a little while because we had some issues with the way we were validating the image server data. So here I was effectively adding them to the build and adding them to the publishing logic. That's the steps I thought were going to be needed. But then we noticed that we were missing in the API, so I had to also introduce them here. And that was a problem because it being missing made it so that any system, and it's actually the follow-up comment, made it that any system already running IncusOS would fail to look at the update index. It would literally say like, oh, can't unpack the update index, and so fail to update itself to a version that could then actually process the new artifacts. So that was a bit of a mess. The way we ended up fixing that is by pushing those commits here, making a release of IncusOS with that, pushing it to users, and then for the period of a week, not actually publishing Migration Manager and Operations Center on the update server, so that all of the old systems could pick up the new logic. And then as of yesterday, we've reintroduced both Operations Center and Migration Manager on the image server, now assuming that all the online systems will have picked up the update by now. So anyway, it was a bit of excitement. The new logic makes it so that we won't have that problem anymore. Any new field we introduce will just get ignored instead of causing a failure. So that fixes that in the future. It just was a bit of a surprise when we hit that. Anyways, then another piece of work that has happened is around introducing factory reset mechanism. So that's what we can see here with adding a new API and functions to perform factory resets. We also added a few small tweaks to make it easier to handle debugging. One is by showing the machine ID. This is so when we provide debugging like hotfix scripts, we can restrict them to a specific system instead of being generally usable by everyone. That's mostly to avoid people reusing the wrong script or sharing scripts and then causing harm because they're not meant to run the system. So that makes it easier for us to actually lock down a particular hotfix that we give just to one particular system. Still kind of related to that, we also added an API internally that we can call from hotfixes to report data on screen. That makes it possible to easily show some feedback to the user instead of having to rely on like writing data back to a USB stick or something, which has been the debug approach so far. So with that, we effectively have a pretty solid mechanism now that lets us, lets anyone force an update by putting it on a rescue drive, just downloading the signed files from the image server effectively. So that doesn't need extra signing because they're already signed. As well as the ability for us to provide hotfixes as effectively signed shell scripts that then get run from that rescue media. So we've got that in place. We've used it successfully for a couple of community users that ran into some weird issues. So we use that for debugging. Alrighty. Next up, so that was, we also did some tweaks to the image customizer. So that's the online website for IncusOS. It was selecting the wrong image, so we fixed that now. And then what do we have? So that's the, we effectively have logic in the integration between IncusOS and the providers, specifically in Operations Center, where we do things like receiving a certificate from Operations Center that needs to be loaded into Incus or into Migration Manager or into Operations Center itself as a trusted certificate, and that's how the TLS API gets brought online. Up until now, we had everything hard-coded to assume Incus, but since we introduced the other two applications, we had to add more logic for that. The way we've done it is by now splitting applications into two camps. So you've got primary applications, so that's Incus, Migration Manager, or Operations Center. And you've got kind of secondary or additional applications. That's, for example, the debug application is one of those. We've got OpenFGA coming up soon. There's a couple of others that would be counted as being like a secondary or add-on application effectively. And we've now added logic to check whether a given application is primary and check which one is the primary application on the system, since we only allow one of those. And that means that instead of hard coding Incus logic in the provider layer, now the provider layer can ask, what's my primary application? And then follow that up with, I suspect we're gonna have it on this one. Follow that up with specific function calls for get certificate and add trusted certificate to go and actually load up add the required certificate when using Operation Center. So that's how that stuff works. Then we've got more logic to effectively implement that add trusted certificate for Migration Manager Operation Center, and doing some more of the plumbing around that. Also, we've added better handling of some of the errors because we had some difficulty with that. Then that was just picking up in Incus 6.17, and then some more tweaking around Migration Manager, Operation Center handling. So that was a few issues we noticed. They weren't picking up etc environment correctly. They were not listening on the right port correctly. So we fixed some of that so that things are nice and smooth. Also, there was an issue where if an update was being picked up by IncusOS right on first boot, it wasn't triggering a reboot, which if the update included critical fixes, in this case, it was the fix to be able to talk to the image server again. It wasn't getting picked up. It needed like a manual reboot by the user, which was not ideal. So we fixed that logic again. There was also an issue with the publisher picking up partial builds, so that was easy enough to fix. And then we're getting towards the last few changes that happened. Again, around primary application handling, better reporting of server-side errors, and just some cleanup around the provider logic. And also I enabled logic so we can clear a remote drive. That's mostly if IncusOS is attached to a SAN, we're now able to actually wipe one of those volumes because there's no real other way to do it than by allowing us to do that. Now, ongoing things, we've got full support for backup restore of an IncusOS instance that's currently being worked on, as well as backup restore and factory reset of an individual application. Like right now, we've got factory reset of the entire system, but we're adding that on per application basis. And also adding an application for OpenFGA. So that's, if you deploy Operation Center, you can have OpenFGA also come up with it and not need to like deploy a separate server just for that. Other than that, we're getting, like, IncusOS is getting in pretty good shape. We've got a few kind of feature requests from the community around netbird and tailscale support that we still need to look into, and a couple of other things that we'll look into soon. Like OpenFG application, there's an open PR for that. Versioning of applications, I think Matthias will look at that one next. Backup restore factory reset, that's currently in progress, and that one will also solve this one, like 301, which is better handling recovery scenarios. Once we support backup and restore, that will take care of that at the same time. Now, for today, the goal is to get IncusOS to support remote syslog. That should be pretty straightforward. Internally, we use the systemd journal for all of our logging. And there is a package called systemd netlogd that can be used to forward the systemd journal externally to an external syslog server. So that's what I want to try and do some plumbing around and get that going. Now, as usual, we're going to need a custom image for that because netlogd is not currently in our image. So that will be the first step, and then adding effectively a service, like a system configuration entry in the API for logging, so that we can actually configure this thing and get it to log stuff externally. So normally I would have deployed a new IncusOS VM just to show the current state of things, but because this one is gonna need a custom build, we should probably go look at doing that instead. So I'm just gonna go and look at the IncusOS codebase here, make sure my copy is up to date. Here we go. Get into my branch for it. and rebase on main code. There we go. Now what we need is to actually include systemd netlogd in the base image. So that's gonna be just a bit of make OSI magic here. It's in conf.d, I think that we've got the list of packages. And there's a core packages in 03. We've got a bunch of systemd stuff already. So we just need to add to the list systemd netlogd. So that's the easy part, just commit that. So base add systemd netlogd for syslog support. Just commit that one. And we can actually do a make, let's do an ISO. So we'll do make build ISO, which will now go and build a custom image for us that we can run locally to then do the rest of the development. I think while this is running, I might be able to do a quick demo of the current state of things. So if I go on the website, so IncusOS customizer, I need my client certificate. So get client certificate. Okay. To just get that trusted. And I mean, still the same thing as I showed in the past. So we want an ISO, we want it to be used for installation. It can wipe the target drive automatically, it's fine. And we want the certificate to be trusted, download, and it's going and downloading that ISO for me. Goes pretty quickly because it's mostly compressed. I think it's about what, 2 point something, 2.3 gigs ish usually. .4 maybe. Anyway, that's almost done. And then we can create a VM from that as the custom image is currently building in the backend. It's a bit bigger than I remembered, but it's always because it's like a bunch of zero space kind of in the image. So we could see for a while it was downloading super fast at like multiple hundred of megabyte per second. That's because it wasn't re-downloading anything. It was just getting empty blocks. Okay, there we go. So now we've got the image. And so as usual, instead of running that on physical hardware, I'm just gonna run it inside of an Incus VM. We're gonna create a new VM called IncusOS. So VM, it's empty. We want a root disk of at least 50 gigs usually. Security, secure boot, we need it reset so that we can load our own keys, and give it 4 CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM. There we go. And then we need to add a VTPM to this. So IncusOS TPM, there we go. And then lastly, we can add the installed media. So disk, and the source is this one, which I've got an older version around. So it's 29109, that's the latest one. There we go. And make sure it boots from that first. Okay, and now if we do IncusOS console, it will just load up the secure boot key and then reboot into the actual installer. There we go, enrollment is done. IncusOS, and now I can look at the actual system booting up and installing itself. While in the background, I'm building a development image to actually work on the syslog feature. So this is going to install very quickly since it's inside of a VM. There we go, and we are done. It's installed. Now I can stop that system. And we can just remove the installed media from it. And then lastly, start it back. Oops, console VGA. There we go. Start this thing back up. and it will actually boot up and initialize itself, and we'll have a functional IncusOS box. So IncusOS starting. I don't remember when was the last time I actually showed it end to end, so figured I would do it again in this live stream. Okay, generating the encryption key. As a reminder, like everything is encrypted through the TPM, and then the extra additional ZFS storage also gets encrypted with a separate key. So that's what we're doing here. And now it's online and downloading Incus itself. And we'll bring that up. There we go, doing the initialization. And we'll have something that's up and running. There we go. So IP address is 172.17.250.153. So we can now add that. So it's 172.17. Do you remember the IP correctly? No, 250.153. Okay. So 250.153 remote and it already exists. That's what I get for doing too many demos. Okay, so remote add. Now it's added, and if we look on there, there's going to be nothing running. We can go and even play with the web UI if we want instead of the CLI. So here we go, and can do create something. So it's called foo, browse image, Debian, Trixie, 13, yeah, let's do that one. And say we want a VM, and let's go. It's downloading the image and then creating our VM on that IncusOS box. And starting up. You can go look at that stuff starting now. And it should be up and running. Should be able to get a terminal on that shortly. Yep, there we go. So anyway, that's IncusOS running Incus on top of it with the default config. So it automatically created a storage pool ZFS for us using whatever available space was left. 16 gigs in this case. We usually partition 35 gigs for the OS. I gave 50 for the old VM, so there's 15 to 16 gigs free. That's what we can see being used here. On the networking side, it created an Incus BR0 and just put stuff on there. We can also expose physical networking, so that's always an option. But for that, we need to actually go and use the new command, IncusAdminOS, system edit demo network, to change the network config. And now that we're here, we can go and put a role on the network interface, which in this case would be instances, to tell it, hey, that network interface can be used to put Incus instances. So you would save that. And now if we go here and oops, I've closed my web UI command. Start. Okay. Now if I go here and I look at networks, we've got now two networks because ENP5S0 is now showing up as being usable for instances as well. So we can go and create another instance. They call it bar, Debian. Again, I want Debian 13, this guy. This time we can do a container, I guess. And on the network side, let's see what we can do. Suppose there's no edit button because it's probably coming from the... okay, it doesn't show the physical NIC. We'll just fix that manually here. So I can do ETH0. It's the NIC type bridged, parent ENP5S0, name ETH0. We need to do a tweak to the UI to actually let us use those devices. I'll file an issue after, because that would be nice to be able to do directly. So now bar should be connected directly to the physical network interface. And we can see it got an IP address here in the 172.17.250. So that's the physical network instead of going through IncusBR0. So that's one of the nice properties of IncusOS for anyone who's not played with that yet, is any of the physical network interfaces that you put in your config is always defined as a bridge, so that it's always possible for you to put Incus instances directly on it without having to go and mess with reconfiguring your system to allow it. Anyways, that's enough playing with current IncusOS. We're here to add some new features. Oh, and we had some issue building stuff, looks like. Okay, what happened? Cannot start UI. I've not, oh yeah, I'm missing yarn. How does that stuff work? We've effectively added the new applications for Operation Center and Migration Manager to the mix. And by doing that, that means we're actually bringing in, building some JavaScript stuff for their respective UIs. And I don't have that installed on my machine. Looking at the dependency list, I might regret installing that, but I'll clear that afterwards. Because it's putting a good chunk of Node stuff. So I usually just let GitHub build stuff for me. But in this live stream, that would not really be practical, since the build on GitHub takes basically as long as the live stream lasts. It takes basically an hour. So it's gonna be faster to just install that locally on my system, and then build a local image, and then do the integration from that point on. Now, as far as the target for this, I do have an Incus container acting as a remote syslog server running in the data center. So that's the machine I'm going to try and log stuff to. If we look, it already captures logs for a bunch of different things, like mostly my Wi-Fi access points and some other stuff. But that's a target I can point at, and it will be able to log those messages. So as soon as we've got a working image, we can go and run the service manually, configure it, and make sure it works, and then go and automate that in the code and push that as a feature. I'm almost done installing that stuff. And I'm just gonna go look and reset things a bit. So I just want the output folder to be gone. Oops, as root. Just so we've got a clean spot for a new image, and now it's building. It's unfortunate I didn't see it fail on the yarn stuff before doing a more in-depth demo of IncusOS, because that would have saved us a bit of time. But here we go. So it's building the Migration Manager UI, looks like. And then it's gonna go and do the same thing for Operation Center. And hopefully then we can see the make OSI build of the full immutable image itself. And once I see that starting, I can go look at some of the code changes for this feature while the image builds in the background, so we can actually test that stuff. So to give you an idea of what can be supported, I was looking at systemd netlogd, specifically its documentation that I found somewhere. I guess we can use the Ubuntu man page. So it has a config file, probably etc systemd netlogd or something like that, and then it's got a network section that points to the logging target. So the most simple logging would be something like that. Network address points to X, and it just logs to that. It does support TLS. That's a bit tricky because of seeding certificates and whatnot. But it does have UDP and I think TCP support. Yeah, it does. So initially, I'm tempted to do support for syslog over UDP, syslog over TCP in the config, and make it flexible enough that we can add some of the other stuff afterwards to just pull in the rest as needed. Maybe offer the log format as an option too. Default is RFC 5424, looks like. And there's an alternative of 3339, so I might as well support both of those. I mean, the protocol I might actually support all three, so UDP, TCP, TLS, or DTLS. I'm just not sure what do you do with the keys for TLS and DTLS, because I don't see any config on there. So maybe it expects the system to use a the remote syslog server to use a valid certificate. I don't know, but it doesn't really hurt to expose that. So anyway, it looks like we are in IncusOS finally. So that's actually building us an image, which is good. And that means that we can actually go look at the code now while this happens. So first thing first is we're gonna need a new API endpoint for logging. So let's get that done. That's within the IncusOS endpoint. And if we go look at what we have in internal REST, that's where we've got the different system endpoints. So we're gonna want something kind of similar to, say, maybe security is the simplest of the bunch. So I'd probably go and clone that. So I'm just gonna copy this guy. Now, internal REST, and we've got API system logging.go, and we can just go and clean up that logic a bit. So anything that says security right now should say logging instead. Go. And it implements get, and it should implement put, and it implements delete. We won't implement delete. That's not something that's useful for us. We just want get and put. And default is not implemented, which is perfectly fine. And now for the actual logic, so this does not apply to us, does not apply to us. And we're basically gonna need some logic in here to return the config and logging state of config and state of the logging subsystem. So get there. Okay, so I think we can basically just return the current state as it is. The current logging state. We're gonna need to obviously extend the state struct to include logging, but that's fine. That logic doesn't matter much. So we want to read the body. If that's delete, we don't care about delete. We want to do put anyways. There we go. And this one was like add an encryption key, which is not really what we want. What we'll need is to instead unpack this, this guy B, the body, into the logging struct, and then restart some of the system logging stuff. So that's the idea. Like it's kind of funny because like the general logic around this really makes me want to put it as a service instead, because it's like a IncusOS service would work better for this. It would have like a start, a stop. It would it would support being reconfigured. It would support giving the state and everything, but it's kind of odd. Like we could have a syslog service. Maybe that's the way to do this. Instead of putting it under system logging, but it feels like system logging is kind of a cleaner approach. It's not really an optional service you want to turn on. It's like you've got a bunch of different options around. Like you want to configure your logging on the system. So you'd want to be able to configure the retention of the journal itself, as well as its remote logging targets. So I think this is the better approach. It's gonna be slightly awkward to put things into place. So I said, like, we're getting the body here, and then we need to kind of unpack this into the right struct, specifically on the system logging struct, and then being able to go and reapply the config. So the logic will be effectively a systemd function that will turn on, like shut down netlogd, apply the new config on disk, and start it back up. That's kind of the idea. So we'll need a call here to apply new configuration, and that will be effectively a call to the systemd package, so systemd dot configure logging or something like that. Just need to handle the error case. I think that's an internal error in this scenario, not a bad request. and then we return an empty response if everything is good. All right, where are we at with generating that image? Okay, it's almost done. And so on our side, we can look at the state here. So state struct, asset date. Under system, we've got network, provider, security, and update. So in this case, we want to add logging to the mix, which is an API system logging. So that's the new struct, like that. That's the easy part. And then we need to go actually in the API and copy, let's do provider as an easier mix for this. So system logging.go, like that. Okay, and instead of provider, we want it to say logging. There we go. Modify part of the logging data. System logging defines a struct to hold the information about the system's logging configuration. Okay, state and logging, that's fine. I don't know that we necessarily have much in the state. We'll have to see if netlogd returns any useful state, as in like, can it tell us if the remote server has reported an error or something? But the default, sorry for the noise, I've got landscapers outside, making a bit of a mess right now. The state in this, like most of the logging will be happening over UDP, so it's stateless. We won't actually get to get any response. So maybe just keep it empty for now, and then the logging config, the config part is where it really matters. And we'll probably want like maybe remote syslog as an option to just make it, or just syslog is probably fine. So we can do syslog, add that to the API. Okay, and then the type of that is system logging syslog, and we want a separate struct for system logging syslog. Contains the configuration options for a remote syslog server. Okay, and then type system logging syslog struct. All right, and then in here, what we'll want is basically the options from in here. So we want the address, the protocol, log format, and that's the main ones I care about for now. The rest, not so much. So let's do that. Address, protocol, log format. Okay. So just putting the infrastructure in place for the configuration effectively. Okay, so we're good with that. Now we can just go look at the image that was very recently built. Here, the goal is going to be to be able to build IncusOS with that logic. It's going to fail to build right now. Okay, apparently it's failing, not for the reason I thought. So those are all strings. I just forgot to set them up in here. Let's do that. Okay, then we can do reformatting and try and build that. Now we're getting a bunch of basic errors because of extra imports and whatnot. So we don't need the secure boot stuff. We don't need ZFS. We don't need errors in here. So secure boot, ZFS can get rid of those. Build. Now line 16, there's an issue with what us not using that, I guess. It's unused. Yeah. And here we're getting the body and not doing anything about it. So that's also failing. And then this stuff won't actually exist right now. So that's also gonna fail. Let's just comment out this chunk for now. And here we can just do, let me import the logger. So I can import log syslog, and we're just gonna log the let's do info so we can actually see it. Okay, that's what we actually use the data, and now it's failing on systemd not actively being used. That makes sense. Now it built. All right, and here the image actually did finish building, so that's good. Now we can do test ISO, I think it's the command, to actually boot up a VM using the media we just built. And that one is going to contain systemd netlogd, so I can actually start poking at that and getting it talking to the remote syslog server I was showing earlier. Okay, so just did the enrollment. For anyone playing with this stuff, when you're using build ISO, it signs with a local ephemeral key. So it's obviously not capable of running any of the production applications that are signed by the Linux containers key. But for development, it works fine because it lets you build the OS and build your local applications and stuff yourself and sign them that way. Okay, so that's installed. We usually detect that. There we go, stopping and restarting it, and it's then gonna be up and running. At which point can start poking at the netlogd process and see how that works. Okay, IncusOS is starting. All right. It's basically the same thing I showed earlier, except this time it's using a text console instead of the VGA console. Okay, starting up, bringing up network. All right, cool. So this one is up and running. Now we can use the debugging feature that lets us do incusexec into it to go and poke around. So if we look, it created a VM here called test IncusOS. So we can go and access that like so. And this one should have systemd netlogd. Where's that installed? Systemd netlogd is here. There should also be a systemd unit for it that hopefully is not running. Loaded active running. Okay, that's not necessarily what we want. So we'll need to fix that. We're quite allergic to running stuff we don't need out of the box. So netlogd running when we don't have a syslog target configured is not something we'd want. But we do have configurations for that stuff, which I'm gonna go and fix now. So make OSI, I think it's in extra. User lib systemd. It's like a preset thing in there we can use. System preset, yeah, that. And then we've got a file here that turns off a whole bunch of systemd stuff. So there's going to be one more of those. So netlogd should be disabled by default. Okay. So I'm just gonna add that in the commit I made earlier so that we've got both of those changes bundled. And here we should be able to do that to make it equivalent of a modified image that had it. Yep, there we go. Now it's not running. So next step is going to be to configure this guy to actually do what we want. Systemd has basically nothing in there, and usually we can push our config in this one. Now let's see where that config is supposed to be at. Netlogd, where does that go? Because it shows the config here, but doesn't really tell us where to put it. Yeah, it's not super clear where they expect that config to be. Maybe it's clearer on the upstream repo documentation. Let's go see. Okay, how to build it. Okay, so that's the user stuff. I don't know if we need to sort that one out, but we'll see. And yeah, okay, systemd netlogd.conf. That's the normal location. For us, we would prefer to put that in /run, which may or may not work. So we're gonna try that first. Because basically IncusOS, the management daemon, creates all the config every time it runs. So we don't like that stuff to be persistent if we can help it. So that's why we do most of our stuff in /run, and we'll try and do this one here too. So I'm gonna use that and then run systemd netlogd.conf. It doesn't exist, I know that. I just would like it to exist now, please. Create, okay, there we go. And now back to our config. We want address protocol log format. So address protocol log format. Is that how they spell it? Yeah. I'm gonna use the default value, that's fine. So I'll use the RFC one there, protocol UDP, and then logging. I think I've got a DNS record for that remote server. So syslog internal data center. Yep. Let's see if it does DNS, that would be nice. So let's put that in place manually for now. And then go on to our syslog server. Cool. I would also like to do a network dump to see what's going on. Incus info test IncusOS. The host side interface is. Where's that info again? Host interface tab here. Okay. So I want to dump the traffic from it so we can see what it does. Restart systemd netlogd. Well, actually, enable now because it's currently disabled. So turn it on and it sent a bunch of stuff to the multicast address instead of where we want it. So that is not looking good for it knowing to use /run. Because if it did, it would have gotten that config. Oh, actually, hold on, the config is wrong. It's missing the section. So maybe that was it. Let's see. Restart it. Clear that. Nope, same thing. Okay, fine. Let's put its config where it expects it. So inside of systemd here. Okay, well, at least it's not logging stuff now. Unknown section network ignoring. Okay, so it did see the file this time. Capital N, is that the issue, really? It's possible. Failed to create network socket, address family not supported by protocol. Okay. Are you really telling me I can't do IPv6 logging with this thing? That would be unfortunate. Because my logging server, my remote syslog server only does IPv6. So that might be an issue. That's unfortunate. And we can test it easily enough anyways. But we might need to actually send a fix for that. So if I pretend I just have a log server at 1234 and I restart it, is it happy this time? No. Failed to create network socket, address family not supported by protocol. Okay. We don't have much debugging tool in the image, so. Okay, so it does have a route for IPv4 traffic, so sending UDP to 1234 should have worked. Let's just check that the config is correct. Address 1234, protocol UDP, RFC 5424. That should work. Let's look at the examples again, because it should. Oh, they want the port. Is that the issue? Really? Let's try 514. Oh, there we go. Okay, now it worked. Cool. So they did want the port, which means, was that the issue all along? And it actually does do IPv6. So if I do to the data center. Yep, that was the issue all along. Now it's going fine over IPv6. Cool. So that's good to know. And now if I look here, I should have a random system logging to me. That's this guy. And let's look at what we're getting. Yep, shows timestamp, shows the system's hostname, which is its UUID. Incus agent was running, some systemd stuff with the service starting up. Cool. So that works fine. Let's just try once again with /run, just in case. I would really prefer not to use etc if possible. So if I move it there and I restart this thing, nope, it moves straight back to its default config. Okay, so that's not good. I also don't really love that its default config is to just log over the multicast address. Like literally everyone on your network would get that. That's not great. I mean, it will be fine for us because we've got it disabled by default, but I don't love that behavior. Okay, so that gives us a working config that we need to put in place. And now it means that on the systemd package side, we need logic to write that network config into etc. And then so long as there's an address provided, start the service, otherwise turn off the service effectively. So that's the idea. I want to check one more thing. So in our case, it's going to be disabled like that. And can I just simply, if I do restart on the service that's disabled, does it still run? It does. Okay, that will make things easier for us. Okay, so now to go look at the actual code for that. Also looking at the time, because I don't want this live stream to last much more than an hour. So definitely won't be able to wrap it up, but we can try to at least put some of the logic in place with some hard-coded values and just try and get that going. Let's just clean up my test system. So I'm gonna make sure the systemd netlogd isn't running. I can actually keep that dump going here, it's fine. And I'm gonna dump the config and then remove it. Again, sorry if you're picking up the noise of the excavator behind me. Hopefully it won't last too long. And there we go. So we want this config to be generated by IncusOS, and then we should have something we can test. So as mentioned, that logic happens in the systemd package here. So we kind of need to create a new file. So we had hostname CTL. Let's copy that maybe as a initial one and called it netlogd.go. Okay. So instead of set hostname, let's do set logging or set syslog. Sets the system's remote syslog configuration. Here we go. And as input, we're going to expect a syslog, which would be a API.system logging syslog. That was so earlier, so I need to get the import for that. Okay, and don't actually need the run stuff, I don't think, so that can go away. First step is write the configuration, then start the daemon. So actually we should handle disabling logging. So if syslog address is empty, then we should go and remove the config. The is exist stuff, I don't remember. Is not exist, I don't remember where is that. Yeah, OS is not exist, okay. So it just wants to, so effectively, if the file, if we fail and it's not because the file doesn't exist, we want to return that. Otherwise, the file will be gone, at which point we can do a stop unit, I think, context, and then systemd netlogd, so we just stop the service completely at that point. Actually, we can return that one, make it simpler. Okay, so that handles disabling, and then if we want to enable it, what we need to do is actually write a config to it. So let's get a new file. We want a writer, so os.create of let's see systemd.conf. If that fails, then the whole thing failed. And then if that doesn't fail, we want to defer the closing of the file here, like that. And then actually write the configuration to it. So using fprintf to w, and then the config itself. For now, just being lazy and hard coding the one that works just for testing, and then we'll be able to actually expand that a bit. So we can write that in place. And lastly, we return restart unit, because that works in both the start and the restart situations. So that saves us from having to distinguish the two. And that should be it for this guy. I mean, at least until I go and fix up this part. I might as well do it correctly. Hold on. So this is address, this is protocol, this is log format. Because we're already in a structured, like a proper printf call, so we might as well just do that. So syslog address, syslog protocol, syslog log format. I should just need to put some defaults in here. So syslog dot protocol is empty. We want it on UDP. If syslog dot log format is empty, we'll want whichever one was the RFC. I don't remember the number now. Log format RFC 5959, was it? Something like that. Log format 5424. Okay. This one. Okay. This is logic to set some defaults. So just move that chunk to here. Then writing the config. Okay. And just getting a few errors to deal with here. So this, is there more than that? Yeah, format is not imported. And we're good. So that's building now. And we just need to actually add that call in the API. So if I go REST API system logging, I already have it open somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So we said that this is set syslog, and then that needs to be passed a context. How do we do that again here? I think there's a context on the request, something like that. And then we need to pass in the config struct, so that's where I'm just going to be cheating a tiny bit here. We can do api.system logging syslog, and we'll just pass the hard-coded values for now for testing. So address is syslog int +n 514. And I mean, the rest, we want the default values, so I might as well just not pass them and see if that works. And we can still log the request because once, well, actually, let's just not for now. So we can just disable that part of the logic. This one, we're actually using it to apply, and let's try and build. Okay, IO and syslog are both imported, not used. Okay, fine. And then this one needs to be defined like that. And I think we're missing an import for the API. So I need to import that. Okay, systemd is missing too. So it's not just the API, we need to import systemd as well. Here we go. Building that. Here we go. Okay, let's see if that actually works. So what I'm doing now is pushing that custom binary, so IncusOSD, over to the test VM. So test IncusOS. And now inside the VM, I can do a bind mount of IncusOSD over the real thing here. And then we can restart IncusOSD. That shouldn't really do anything exciting. It causes like a network reconfig, that's what we're seeing here. But other than that, that's really all that's going on. There's no configuration in place right now for logging, so that's normal. Actually, I think I forgot something else in the API. Let me just and handle that. So in the API, I did create the file, but I didn't actually connect it to the root of the API. And we've got a list somewhere. Where's that list of API endpoints? Oh, is it on the server itself? Yeah, there we go. So we need to actually do the plumbing here for logging. So let's add /logging to the endpoints. And it will go here. Okay, and then we can build this again. Need to push that binary over to the VM after I've mounted it. IncusOSD, oops, lazy unmount. There, IncusOSD, push the binary, mount it again, restart again. All right. So it just refreshed, and now if we go and directly poke at it, so if I do query on system logging, oh, we don't have the incus command, right? That makes sense. We should have curl down. Unix socket, IncusOS, Unix there, and then OS/1.0. Does that work? Yeah, so I'm poking the API directly here. And if I poke system logging, we can see it exists. It returns just an empty config here. Now, if I go and I push basically anything, that should trigger the logic that's hard-coded to go and configure it. So if I push that, there we go. It configured it, and now it's talking to me. So that's basically not functional. The next step is just to unpack the config struct from the user and then passing that through, which I think I probably have time to do that just now. It should be easy enough. Let's see. I actually wanted to look at the system. It's weird, like we've got providers in the API, but I don't see a file for it. That's kind of odd. Anyway, I'm looking for one that does unpack a JSON struct. This one does. So let's copy paste that chunk of code here into our logging one. Okay. So obviously it's not reset data, it's logging data. System logging is what we're getting. We should just always try to unpack it because an empty value is not really valid in our case. So that's effectively unpacking the data directly for us. And then set logging can use from the data logging data dot config dot syslog is what we want to pass. Does that build? Not quite. We're missing JSON and we've got an error redefined here. So encoding JSON here. That part of the code can go away. And that builds. Okay. Now, so that's working fine. And now if that succeeds, we want to actually persist that configuration. So we actually want to do s.state.system.logging.config and set that to logging data.config. Okay. So that should actually be a pretty functional piece of code at this point. So let me just unmount it again, push the resulting, oops, forgot to delete it, delete the file, push the resulting binary, bind mount the thing again, restart IncusOS. So we can see it still has the config in place right now. That's good. That's what we expect. So that's all good. And then we should be able to actually go and configure it now. So right now it will still log everything remotely, but if we actually push an empty struct to it, successful, okay. In theory, that should have turned it off. Yep, it's off. And now if we pass it some configs, so we need to push that as config and then syslog, and then in there address is syslog and the CMTL there. And then that closes this section, that closes the parent one. So we open 1, 2, 3 section, we close 3. Successful, okay. Did that actually do anything? Yeah, netlog is back on, that's nice. Netlog D, syslog in the CMTL, yeah, well, good. It didn't trigger any logging message right now, which is slightly surprising. Yeah. Failed to create networks. Oh, never mind. I keep forgetting to set the port every time. There we go. That was the issue. Okay, so that works fine from an API standpoint. There's still one small thing to do, which is when the system starts up, we need to actually go and apply that. Otherwise, it will only work when we poke the API. So in the main code, there should be a function somewhere that applies the network config. There, apply network. And we should just do it right afterwards. So configure logging. And it's simply systemd set syslog and then pass it a context and pass it the state, so it's s.system.logging.config. That way it will automatically get it on startup. Cannot use system logging config. Oh, it's right. It actually wants the nested syslog struct. Sure. Wrong file. That close the file. Yeah. Set syslog here. So it's .syslog. This one. Here we go. Now we have actually got this thing all done as far as plumbing and everything. Let's look at the static analysis because there might be some stuff I need to clean up. There probably will be. There usually is. Yep, there we go. Internal systemd. So internal systemd netlog d. It's complaining about errors and handles. All right. Okay, so that's easy. I mean, yes, we don't do anything, but we should just explicitly don't do anything. Okay, and then just some alignment stuff on system logging in the config here. So it's line 5. it's that thing where it wants those to be aligned like that. And that should clear running CI. Yep, good. All right, so that's the feature done actually. Now let's just split that stuff into some commits and we should be good to go. So the first will be the API. So IncusOS API, add system logging. So that's here, IncusOS API like that. Then we can add it to the state as well. So for the state, it's just add logging. And that's in the IncusOS internal state package. There we go. Then for systemd, we want to add the new function. So it's add set syslog to the systemd package. So we need to actually include the new files in that. Systemd, here we go. And then we've got the REST API. So REST API like that. IncusOS REST, add 1.0 system logging for the REST API. And then lastly, we've got the daemon, which is IncusOS apply logging config on startup. And with that, there shouldn't be any more changes left over. We're good. Let's push that to GitHub and open a pull request for add syslog support, and then that closes the syslog issue. System log endpoint, no, not that one. The search on GitHub has gotten worse and worse and worse. Remote logging, okay, 355. Like those keywords are definitely in the issue, but I can't find it. It's weird. So yeah, add support for remote logging, add syslog support, and here we go. So just need to wait for the CI to do its thing. But this is basically it. Just that set of commit to add systemd-netlockd to the image itself, and the new API and config for it, and making sure it's correctly applied. And with that, we've now got IncusOS supporting logging to a remote syslog server. And I think that's going to be it for this live stream. So thanks a lot for watching this. Hopefully it was useful as an update on the state of IncusOS, quick demo of where we're at, and now seeing like a pretty simple feature just being added quickly into IncusOS. This is going to go through review, testing, and whatnot, and will probably make its way into IncusOS build most likely tomorrow. Again, thanks a lot for everyone for watching this. If you've got any questions about this, feel free to leave them down below in the comment section, or you can go on a community forum and interact with the community over there. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.